You're listening to Forward Faster, bite-sized insights for entrepreneurs.
Hi, welcome to Forward Faster. I'm Sujatha Ramanujan, the Managing Director of Luminate, the world's only accelerator focused solely on startups with optics, photonics, and imaging. With me today is Jay Kumler, President of Jenoptik, and Jay is also a member of the Luminate Advisory Board. Thank you for joining us on Forward Faster, Jay.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.
Can you start out by telling us a little bit about your educational background, your early professional career, and what led you to become the founder of Coastal Optical Systems?
Sure. I started my educational career with a bachelor's in physics from Miami University. So I'm originally from the Midwest and became interested in optics and lasers in that undergraduate program. And really thought I was going to get a job in solar energy coming out of undergraduate school, but that didn't really work out. So asked my advisor about the best optics schools to try to apply for and ended up at the University of Rochester. So I have a master's from the Institute of Optics at the University of Rochester. And in that time, when I was in school, for most students graduating, most of the opportunities were in the defense industry. So I went from the University of Rochester to go work in the defense industry, designing and building reconnaissance lenses and telescopes and things like that.
You've been on both sides of the M&A process, beginning with Jenoptik's acquisition of Coastal Optical Systems. And why did you sell Coastal and why to Jenoptik?
Well, I'll back up and say, why did we start Coastal? I might have left that off the last question. In the early 90s, there was a sort of massive downturn in the defense industry. So we were really interested in starting a company where we could transfer what we knew about building optics for defense and find commercial and industrial markets that could use really high performance, really high cost optics and lens assemblies and systems. So we wrote a business plan and went ahead and just jumped into it. It was a great experience in starting up a company and just all the excitement of doing that and sort of leaving your job and just jumping in with 2 feet. Well, we grew up the company. We were successful in finding commercial and industrial markets like semiconductor equipment, like the entertainment industry, where we could build really high performance optics for cinematography and for lots of fun applications, and sort of take what we knew from defense optics and turn it into really interesting products in other markets, and not be so subject to a single market. The thing that really scared us was to be all in defense or all in maybe semiconductor, where the markets go through big cycles. But the reason we sold it was because 2 of the founders, after 10 years of running the company, 2 of the founders wanted to exit. And so we hired investment bankers and prepared a book and went off and started pitching the company to, we thought maybe our customers would be interested in buying us as a vertical integration, maybe competitors. I mean, we put an A list and a B list together. And in the end, the Coastal had the most value for international buyers. So it's companies that were looking for a manufacturing footprint in the United States. So our serious offers came from European and other international companies. And the best fit was with Jenoptik. It was a very fortunate, I think, decision, because now looking back on it to see how the company has developed since then, it's just been a huge success story. We never really had to explain to Jenoptik why Coastal was valuable. I mean, they understood the inherent value in the company and they understood the technology. So it was a great transition. And so those 2 founders that wanted to exit got their check on the day of closing and went on their way. So it was win-win. Everyone accomplished their goals. two owners exited, and for me, it was the next stage in the development of the company.
You have served as the president of Jenoptik Optical Systems for nearly 20 years, and it's rare that an acquired founder that thrives so well within a new parent company, as you clearly have. So, to what do you attribute such a successful transition and your continued success?
I suppose that maybe I had the right personality, that I wasn't so wrapped up in maybe just being a founder or staying in absolute control. I mean, there are certainly advantages in running a small private company, but maybe I have the personality to be able to make the transition to a larger publicly traded company. But I really think it says more about Jenoptik than it says about me. I've had a fantastic experience. I've had incredible boards of directors. All of the people over the years that I've worked with Jenoptik have incredibly high integrity, and I've learned a lot. So I think the reason I've been successful as a startup founder and then making the transition to a large, some would say, bureaucratic organization is more about Jenoptik than about me. I mean, it's really been a great experience. I've enjoyed all the changes. I mean, I don't think I would be as fulfilled in my career if I was still running Coastal. I mean, I could exit after 3 years and I would be gone. It's because of the fact that my growth curve has been on such a steep trajectory because of learning what it means to do business internationally, what it means to be able to grow companies through different stages of development. Has really made it sort of the perfect spot for me.
So I'm going to ask a continuation question of that, and that is, a lot of times when a company acquires another company, there's a culture mismatch between the company that's buying and the company that is being purchased. Would you say your company's already had a culture match, or was there a little bit more flexibility?
There was some learning there, and so both sides. There's always some kind of a cultural match a mismatch in my experience. It's a question of whether people on either side want to be flexible and give the relationship a chance to learn how to work with each other. And I see that also anytime when we're trying to do business in any Asian countries. I mean, it takes time as a person that hasn't been doing that my entire career. It takes time to learn how to do business culturally. So it's something I'm learning. But in the context that you were saying, in one company acquiring another, for Coastal and Jenoptik, it was something that was easy enough to overcome or to learn about. And Jenoptik has a lot of experience in acquiring companies around the world. So I think the harder thing to adjust to is the controlling structure that's required to be in a publicly traded company. So all the reporting requirements and everything is a new thing to get used to. The cultural thing for us has been pretty smooth.
So as you look to grow Jenoptik, M&A is obviously a key to that strategy. From the vantage point of a leading optics business executive, what are the most exciting trends and emerging technologies in optics and photonics that you're seeing?
Sure. I think the one engine and trend that's really driving the optics industry from our perspective is consumer electronics. And to say consumer electronics is a very broad statement, but it's all the things that are going into the consumer electronics products that require higher and higher performance optics, smaller and smaller form factors, really incredible functionality that's going into whether you want to talk about tablets or phones or AR, VR certainly is in the same category. So I really think that everything that's being the incredible pace of innovation in consumer electronics is an engine that's really driving the optics industry. The second one that we see strongly everywhere across the globe is the increasing pace of automation in terms of autonomous vehicles. So everything about the car and the changes that are happening in the car. So you have better and better LiDAR sensors, more and more cameras. And I'm talking about inside the cars, outside the cars, everything from driver assistance to full autonomy. That's an incredible engine, which is receiving a ton of investments from the investment community, which is in turn creating amazing startup companies and also very large companies now with multi-billion-dollar valuations, which is pushing optics and technologies companies like Jenoptik to higher and higher performance levels. And then the third trend that I would say is pretty closely related is just artificial intelligence across the board. So the days of a diagnostic instrument being just an instrument that's just a dumb instrument, or sensors or cameras. I mean, when you look at cameras and all kinds of sensors, it's not enough to just be a camera system now. It has to have the machine learning. It has to have the artificial intelligence. And that's impacting biophotonics, automotive, semiconductor equipment, and it's across the board. And it's definitely an important part of a lot of Jenoptik products, from license plate reading systems, our traffic camera systems. A lot of our metrology systems include machine learning and deep learning algorithms. And then almost especially in the US, it's impacting our medical products. So it's a huge trend, and it's really shaping our business and our midterm planning.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Jenoptik's motivation in its recent acquisition of Trioptics?
Sure. There can be a lot of different reasons that you would do a strategic acquisition. I'm not really very experienced in acquisitions which are just for financial reasons, where you're just acquiring companies and consolidating the results and rolling them up. So Jenoptik is definitely not a financial holding company that just buys companies to try to drive top line growth. So strategic acquisitions are a little bit more challenging, if you will. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're doing an acquisition, it has to do something to help our competitive advantage. I mean, at the end of the day, that's why we're acquiring a company. And Trioptics really checks a lot of boxes. I mean, if you want to think back to the trends that we were just talking about, I mean, Trioptics is really in a leadership position in a couple of those mega trends that we were talking about. They're building test equipment that's really leading the way in all of those areas. And so that way, the acquisition really strengthens Jenoptik technologically. I mean, that's really important. I think that's the first main factor. It definitely is going to expand our reach into Asia and North America. So we're happy to have the horsepower that Trioptics has in Asia. It's really going to help accelerate Jenoptik's growth overall. And it definitely opens us up to new markets and gives us new opportunities for customer access. So the technology, expanding our global reach in some ways, and giving us access to new customers. So it's really it fits all of our requirements.
What are the biggest challenges in identifying and executing M&A transactions? Are there any key lessons learned in your personal experience on successful or from failed M&A processes?
I think first the challenges. In Don Galini's podcast, he made some, obviously all of it was good stuff, but he made some points about what investors look for when they're investing in a company. And he talked about the team and the addressable market and the value proposition. But I think the challenge for a company buying a company rather than investor investing in a company is that on top of all of those factors, looking at the team and the technology and the addressable market, we also have to think about how the acquired company fits into our growth strategy So does the company that we're considering acquiring really fit well into the way that we're planning to grow the company? Does it fit into our existing organization? I mean, there's some cases where maybe the target looks attractive, but it just doesn't fit into the way that we're organized globally. Does it, we have to think about how will our customers react to the acquisition, since some of our industries are small, the optics industry overall is small. You certainly have to think about whether we're going to somehow impact our customers negatively if we do the acquisition. And then there may be other kinds of dyssynergies just because of market forces or other kinds of factors. So in a way, it's a little bit more complicated than just being an individual investor and putting money into a company. Those are the challenges. I think most successful acquisitions, and I've only been involved in a few, there's natural synergies that exist that don't have to be sort of artificially created. And a lot of times, if it's not organic in that way, that's when it really gets into trouble, when it's sort of just a bolt-on acquisition that's not really embedded in your strategy. As far as the process goes, I've been on both sides of the table. I mean, I've been the one that's standing up in front of employees saying, don't worry, you're not going to lose your job just because you're being acquired. When we acquired MEMS Optical in Huntsville, Alabama, we had to make sure that we didn't lose. You don't want the people to be somehow floating a resume or looking for another job. So communications, critical in the process is communications first. We have to communicate with the acquired company. We have to communicate with our employees. We have to communicate with our investors. We have to communicate with the outside world so that it's clear, what our intention, it's clear as it can be, what's our intention, what's the long-term outlook. Because we don't want the value of the company that we're acquiring to leave, and start looking for other options. Another key in the process is it certainly helps if there's some continuity of leadership. It's harder if this is an exit strategy for the founders and they're gone and out the door. So you really have to look at the target and say, is there inherent value in the company, even if we might lose some key people? But if the strategy can be, if the acquisition approach can be 75% acquisition, or somehow that we can leave it so that the owners of the targeted company still have skin in the game, and there's lots of different ways to do that, then that certainly helps the transition. And the other sort of thing about the process is just to have a long view. I think acquisitions might fail if it's supposed to immediately, if you're focused on having immediate cost synergies. So if it's all about closing a plant and moving a product from one location to another, it's going to be a lot more risky. It's already disruptive enough as it is when you're doing an acquisition, and very stressful for the folks that are going through it. We try to take the long view and not try to change everything all at once. So be patient and let the integration process work itself out.
So on a different note, how is the pandemic impacting your business in particular, and then the industry as a whole? And what changes have you implemented in the new normal that might continue even after most businesses go back to more traditional practices?
First and foremost, I mean, it's, the pandemic's had a huge impact on our family, the employees and families. That's the biggest thing. And I really appreciate the hard work and the effort that all the employees in the U.S. and then also around the world, the job that they do to try to manage their own personal lives and taking care of their families and still do such a great job at work. So that's that's the main thing. I mean, it's had a huge impact on our employees, and they're doing a great job of navigating all of that. The pandemic, from our business perspective, has definitely hurt some of our customers. We're dependent on the success of our customers, and we've certainly experienced a downturn in some of our markets. We benefit from the fact that we're diversified, but if we look at a couple of our markets like automotive and entertainment, they've been hurt significantly. But some of our other markets like semiconductor equipment and defense seem to have had little impact from the pandemic. So that's helped us to stay stable and to try to keep posting good results, even though some of our markets are definitely impacted. And as far as lasting changes, I mean, I think that our industry probably the first thing that comes to mind is that it's changing the way that we interact with each other in the industry. Certainly, I mean, you and I are having a Zoom interview, and everything about Luminate has gone, or a lot of things have gone virtual. And so I don't think anyone really knows what trade shows and conferences are going to look like, in the future. I assume that there's going to be some things about the way we interact company to company and company to customer are going to be permanently changed, even if COVID is completely gone. So I don't know if that means bigger component of virtual content. I don't know what a virtual trade show really looks like, but I think it's affected business travel and maybe large scale events, probably in ways that are lasting and more close to home. I mean, I think most companies will probably have a more flexible remote working policy. I think that of our employees in North America, probably there's a certain percentage of them that will have increasing opportunities to work remotely, and that won't, that'll probably stay as the new normal. And we also think about floor plans and office space and how our offices are organized. I mean, it could be that we've made changes and protocols now for COVID, but I could see some of those changes lasting long term.
No, I wonder a little bit as we look at hiring, this is a little bit wandering, as we look at the hiring into optics companies, that our grads are not, unless things change really soon, not getting the hands-on experience that you typically expect in when somebody graduates from college. I have a college-age daughter who's taking her bio lab online. I'm not entirely sure. A laboratory online is really the same thing as dropping things and breaking them and not doing it right.
Right.
And I'm wondering how that's going to affect both our hiring practices as well as our retention practices with our more senior employees, as they're going to have to teach people how to work in the lab.
It's a great point. I have a family member who's teaching a chemistry lab, not a college level chemistry lab, remotely out of her house. So it's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's something. I've had some labs that my children have been doing in our kitchen go terribly wrong. So what is one piece of advice you would give an entrepreneur looking to be acquired by a larger company like a Jenoptik?
This may end up sounding a little bit sarcastic or whatever, but probably the company should focus less on trying to get acquired by a company. I think that's one of the points that Milton made, that companies are bought, not sold. And so I would tell anyone, it's really been a great experience working and helping at Luminate and to have contact with so many of these cool companies. And so thank you for giving me the chance to do that. But I would tell any of the companies that we talk to focus more on customers and focus on getting sales above everything. I mean, I would say whenever possible, above raising money, above, trying to position yourself to get acquired. Because I guess that's from personal experience. That's the way we did it. We just tried to get customers even before we officially launched. We had sort of customers that were lined up. So focus on customers and sales and revenues. And it just feels like to me, I'm probably just old fashioned, but cash flow and purchase orders fix almost all the other problems, because you can hire people. If you're missing people on your team, if you're missing certain technology, if you need money for new product development, I would just do whatever, encourage companies to do whatever they could to get a real living, breathing, cash paying customer. And that's a great validation of your business, but it enables so many other things. It just changes the conversation with investors. Here's my POs, and here's the customers that are currently either buying my product or they're waiting anxiously to get a hold of my product.
Thank you, Jay, for joining us. As usual, it was very insightful, and we appreciate the time and effort you put into guiding our companies and joining us. So for people listening, you can hear more podcasts like this at nextcorp.org/podcast on our website, and that's nextcorps.org. Or you can find us on iTunes or Spotify. Just search NextCorp Forward Faster.